Gentlemen, welcome to TechGig webinars, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key of enhancing our performances and for our growth as professionals. With this principle in mind, TechGig has initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give a quick insight of various domains. Today's webinar session is first in the Tech Leadership series, and topic for today's webinar is Success through Self-Development and Innovative Approach. We are delighted to have Mr. Shantanu Paknikar as our guest speaker today. Mr. Shantanu is General Manager, Solution Initiatives in the IT Services Division of Happiest Mind Technologies Private Limited. His key technology interest areas include middleware systems, service-oriented architecture, business process and rule management, enterprise integration, cloud computing, social computing, enterprise mobility, and distributed computing systems. Gentlemen, this presentation will continue for next 45 minutes and we'll take your questions after the presentation. In the meanwhile, you can post your queries through the chat pane available in the webinar software. You can also participate in quiz contest during the webinar. Details will be provided during the session. Without further ado, I introduce you to our guest speaker, Mr. Shantanu.
Hello. This is Shantanu. Good afternoon, good morning to everybody. I have a quick question for the organizers. Is it audible? Is my voice clear? If you all can let me know through the chat.
You are audible, Mr. Paknikar.
Okay, great. Can we begin?
Please share your screen. Thank you.
Yes, the screen is shared. Is it visible? If so, I'll begin.
The screen is still not visible.
Okay, I've shared it and I can see it in the audience view.
It is visible now. Yeah, we can start now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Welcome everybody. My name is Shantanu Paknikar, and first of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to every one of you for logging in, not just from India, but from all parts of the world. I had a look quickly at the attendee list. I know some who have joined in from the US and from Europe. Thank you to all those who I know and all those who I don't know as well. Today's session is on the soft skills side, and this is a novel approach, an innovative approach to self-development. Now, people development, right, is a fascinating topic, and fascinating for me, personally speaking, but for many of us, regardless of the role that we play, either as individuals who are part of a larger team or as leaders being responsible for a team of people. And we face difficult questions such as, what is it that makes people tick? Why are some people more successful than others? Is there any pattern behind doing well and succeeding, or is it just a matter of luck and a lot of hard work, of course? Now, the approach that I'll be presenting here is something that I've discovered, and there's no claim to inventing anything. It's possible that many people, perhaps many of you on this call, already follow some of the practices that I presented. What my effort has been to try to put it together in a structured and a systematic and easy to remember form. I also know that there could be other approaches as well, and please consider this as a contribution from my side as I understand, right, what could be one way to do well in our professional life. One other thing is that this session is focused towards the IT industry that I am a part of, that all of us, many of us are a part of. However, the applicability goes beyond because it's the area of people development, and as we move to really a knowledge-based society and people-based environment across industries, probably the topic becomes even more relevant. Now, just moving forward, we would be aware of the letters of the English alphabet, and you know the letters of the English alphabet, they should start appearing on your screen now, have been used to put together this particular approach to self-development, and the approach is titled the AEIOU framework, right? So you should be able to see the letters on your screen, the letters, the vowels of the English alphabet. And the reason for choosing has been fairly simple. It's easy to remember. Every letter represents a concept, and the concepts together make up the framework that I'll be describing here. Now, going ahead, the session objectives in terms of what we're trying to achieve as far as this webinar is concerned. Three simple things, right? And you know, these will be the takeaways from the session. Why is self-development important? What is the AEIOU framework about? And how can an individual leverage this framework for his or her self-development? So these are the three main things that we'll be trying to achieve during the session. During the session, if you have any questions, I believe there is a chat option where you can send across your questions to the moderator, and I'll try to answer the questions either during the session or right towards the end of the session. Now, I wanted to begin with a little story, and you know, it's a story of two archers, and it's from Indian mythology. One of the archers is fairly famous. You know, when we say archer and when we say Indian mythology, the first name that comes to mind is Arjun. And the reason why I wanted to highlight this story was that we're all aware that Arjun got his training in archery from Dronacharya. However, some of us would also be aware that he went way beyond what he learned from the Guru. For example, there's this story where he was eating food at night without lights, right? The candle went off, the diya went off, and then he thought that if my hand can take the food from the plate to the mouth in the dark, then so can my arrow go from my bow to the target in the dark. And he started practicing, right? So that's one story why, that I wanted to highlight. The other one is, you know, a lesser known character, but still famous all the same, by the name of Eklavya, who was unfortunate in that he did not get formal training from the Guru, but he tried to absorb what he could by watching from the distance, from the side, and then he tried to practice as much as he could in order to try to match Arjuna and the rest of the pupils. Now, the motto or the moral of the story, and I wanted to set the context for the session, is it's important to learn even when we are not being taught, right? And that's where the concept of self-development comes in. So, you know, from the relevance point of view in terms of our industry today, what's the now way, right? In today's society, people development, skills, training, competency initiatives, things like that, that is something that is a given. It is a key corporate charter, and you know, no organization can afford to ignore that. However, there is a problem of scale, and what I mean by that is very large organizations, sometimes coverage can be a problem, organizations larger than 100,000 people or so, coverage in terms of the number of people who can be covered through quality initiatives could be a problem. In smaller organizations, sometimes there is a lot of focus in terms of the initial numbers being met, right? The initial objectives being achieved, and therefore there is a risk that prioritization could be a problem in terms of development initiatives, formal development initiatives. So, in a nutshell, there is a need overall for a supplemented approach towards the traditional ones such as training or coaching and mentoring. And what better way than having every individual take responsibility for his or her development. So that's where the self-development concept comes from, and that's the reason why it is important. Now, the context of self-development, right, has to be within the concept of a team. And what we mean by that is that in every organization, so there are some 700, 800 odd people attending this session right now. Every one of us is a member of a particular team, but come to think of it, these teams have a self-contained relationship. So if you take a look, if you're a part of a project team, typically that's a part of a larger account team, which is a part of a business unit, which is typically a part of the overall organized, highly simplified depiction on your screen right now. But the point is that every one of us will be somewhere where we'll be a part of a team, the immediate team, and we will be a part of the larger teams as well, right? And when we talk about our development, or when we talk about people development for our team, it has to happen in the context of one of these, right? It cannot happen in a professional environment, or should not outside this context. What happens outside this context will be in the personal domain. Right? So, and our scope here is in the professional area. Now, with that background, the problem is the following. Every one of us will have a different approach to self-development, right? So my understanding in terms of what I need to do in order to upskill myself or upgrade my skills over the next 1 year maybe, might be different from the next person, might be different from the next person. Therefore, the results could vary, right? And if there's a variation in the results, then there's a problem as far as managing is concerned. And any structured approach, any structured and systematic approach which can be used by a large number of people across the organization can then make a difference, because then hopefully the results will be a little more predictable. Now, with that background, right, we come to the question, the basic question itself, which is, what is the AEIOU framework, right, that we are talking about in this session? What we are trying to describe out here is there is a ladder that can be visualized, and you'll see it coming up on your screen, made up of 5 blocks with the 5 vowels. And think of the AEIOU framework as a ladder based on the vowels of the alphabet. It represents a structured approach to self-development. It needs to be viewed exactly as I mentioned, a ladder that we have to climb over time, right, from one block to another. And then we need to remember that this is a self-development approach. It's not a team development approach. So what I mean by that is it needs to be used by an individual in a personal capacity, as a one-on-one exercise, as a series of one-on-one exercises. And the idea is that a framework can help each one of us to assess where we stand on the ladder, on which block or on which step of the ladder we stand, and also can help us to plan what we need to do in order to climb the ladder, right? So during the session, hopefully it will become a little more clear in terms of how the framework can be leveraged.
Hello, sorry for intervening.
Now move to the main portion of the, yes?
Your voice is
Yes.
breaking a bit, and it is not very much audible to the attendees. Can you please check?
Okay. Just hold on. Okay, is it a little better now?
Yeah, it seems better now. We can continue. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll try to be a little slow, and if there are any questions for any slides to be repeated, we can do that as well. So we move on to the next session, the main portion of the presentation, which is leveraging the AAIOU framework. And for that, we need to understand what the framework is and then how we can use it. The first block, as far as the A is concerned, represents awareness. And in the awareness portion, what we are trying to say here is that it's very important to have awareness of everything that is happening around us in terms of our team. And there's an exercise there, right, which has 10 questions. I would request the audience to go through that exercise quickly, to go through those 10 questions and try to figure out what is the comfort level with respect to the answers, right? So this is an exercise which can be carried out offline. The 10 questions are sample questions. You could have a different set of questions and a different number of questions as well. Now, for a score, the recommended score there is 8 out of 10. If you get around 8 out of 10 right, or you're able to answer them comfortably, then you can move to the next block of the ladder, which is E. But otherwise, it's very important to increase the awareness of the team if the comfort level is in answering such questions, right? So the questions would be, what is my team structure? Who are the people who are taking responsibility for certain initiatives? Who are key customers? What are the roles and responsibilities? What are the targets for the team? Things like that. And really building awareness about everything that is happening is very, very critical. How can we build awareness? That's fairly straightforward. For example, curiosity makes a big difference. It's important to ask questions from colleagues, right, and from others around us on what is happening. We can keep eyes and ears open, coffee discussions, lunch discussions. There's a lot of information that we can get, right? And then there are mailers and announcements which come out from time to time or email. So instead of putting them into some folder within our email, maybe we can go through them when time permits. Again, to try to build up our awareness of what is happening. In a nutshell, the first step in the AAIOU framework is building awareness of the chosen team, building awareness of the chosen team with respect to, the various activities which are happening, right? What is the team involved in? Now, when we move on to the next step of the ladder, so to say, the next step of the ladder represents enthusiasm. The E in AAIOU represents enthusiasm. And the message is that awareness has to be translated into enthusiasm and into instances where we volunteer for participating in various initiatives. Sometimes it's possible that we build up the awareness, but we don't do anything about it. And therefore, the exercise on the slide attempts to help to figure out where do I stand on the enthusiasm scale. Once again, these are only sample or recommended questions. The user of the framework, right, people who are using the framework can come up with their own set of questions. But the idea is, can we assess what's the enthusiasm level overall? And then based on the results of the self-assessment, if you get, say, for example, 4 out of 5 questions correct, as in you can answer them comfortably, probably it's time to move to the next step of the ladder, But otherwise, perhaps there is a situation where we are building up our awareness, but we're not demonstrating the enthusiasm as much as we should. Now, beyond enthusiasm, when we move beyond enthusiasm, it's very important to translate the enthusiasm into what would be the next step of the ladder, which is the involvement. And I represents involvement in the framework. And this might happen to us sometimes, or it might be a situation where we see it happening to people in our teams if we are in leadership roles. That is, we might send out an email saying, hey, I want to participate in this, but the actual participation does not happen, right? So translating enthusiasm to involvement would be the next step of the framework, of the ladder. And again, the framework has an exercise with 5 sample questions where a person can assess that am I translating the enthusiasm, my awareness and enthusiasm, into actual involvement, or is it just written on paper? And this is very, very critical because there are so many times when we have situations where people, all of us have faced this, are trying to run some initiatives, but there is just no support at all, right? And very few people come forward to volunteer, to get involved, to participate, and to support the people who are actually trying to achieve something. So the involvement part is very critical, and it shows whether the awareness and the enthusiasm is getting translated or not into actual involvement. Now, at this stage, it's a good point to take a very quick recap on the 3 steps that we have covered so far. One is on the awareness side, right, which is building up awareness on the team's activities. And by team, remember that the team could be any one of the teams that were depicted in the earlier figure. So it could be the immediate team, or it could be the next level team. For example, if I'm in a project engineer role, right, a software developer or a project engineer role, my immediate team will be the project team. However, I will also be a part of the larger account team. So when I'm assessing myself using the AEIOU framework, it can be either for the project team or it can be for the account team. So what that means is that if I'm evaluating my own awareness of various topics, it could be either at a project level in terms of, say, which modules are going on, when is the next release, and so on, or it could be at an account level in terms of which are the other projects going on, right? What are the key customer challenges? What more can we do for this particular customer, and so on. So the team selection is very critical, and then we build up our awareness. Once the awareness is there, then we demonstrate some level of enthusiasm in terms of participating. So let's say that there is a different project where there is a technology for cloud computing being adopted, and it is one of my interest areas. Then I can volunteer to participate in that in some capacity, maybe half an hour a day or 1 hour a day. Similarly, once the volunteering is done, then you actually have to execute on that. That is where the involvement comes in, the actual involvement, right? And following all 3, awareness, enthusiasm, and involvement, is a definite way to convey to your management, to your team, to your colleagues, to your seniors, and to your juniors, right, that there is a very different approach that you're following as far as work is concerned. And all this is over and above the regular goals and objectives, but it's not something which will interfere with those. So what I mean to say is, if you get involved in 1 or 2 additional initiatives for one of the teams, it is unlikely there will be any opposition. Yes, you will need to devote time to those, but that's a question of how you can manage the time and perhaps select some initiatives which are connected with the current work that you're doing anyway, right, so that it ties back. Now, with that background, we can move forward to the next step of the ladder. Some of you might have guessed it, which is once you have the involvement in one or more initiatives, is it possible to go ahead and take ownership for at least one, if not more than one, of the initiatives? And we need to remember that it is possible to take ownership even without having that particular designation. So what I mean by that is there might be a new component that needs to be developed. There might need to be an event that needs to be set up or conducted. There might be a new service line to be launched, to be incubated and launched, right, at senior levels. Maybe it is important to launch a new service line. And there is hesitation often to move beyond involvement. We are ready to support somebody else, but sometimes there is hesitation in terms of moving to the next level, which is putting our head on the line and taking ownership, taking responsibility and being accountable. So that's where the O of the AAIOU framework comes in, which is the ability to take ownership as far as the initiatives, at least one or more initiatives are concerned. Once again, if you take a look at the questions, right, on your screen, then the assessment that needs to be done, the self-assessment again that needs to be done is have I in various initiatives into ownership, right? Am I leading by example? Am I showing the way to others? Am I an individual contributor, right? So when you're on the I step of the ladder, you're typically, you're often a contributor, an individual contributor, and you offer your specialized skills to somebody else. But here, once you own an initiative, then it's very important to move to the next level and to lead. And there it is important to scale out, to use the network, and to reach out to people and to get people to support, right? Simple examples would be, have I created an artifact, right? So depending on the role, a developer, right, might ask himself or herself, is there any component that I have created? If there's an architect, it could be in terms of a framework or an accelerator that has been created by the person. Finally, and most important, is there a way? So, am I increasing as an owner of various initiatives? Is my ownership increasing quarter on quarter and year on year? Right? Ownership for various initiatives. So that's where we are in terms of the ownership aspect. And then the approach is very similar. The approach is that if you get a high score, if you can answer a lot of questions comfortably, then you can move beyond O to the next block. Otherwise, perhaps the involvement is not getting translated into ownership, and maybe we need to increase our ownership there. Now, at this stage, I will take a look at some of the questions that have come in so far, and I'd encourage all of you to keep the questions coming in, and I'll read out some of the questions. One question is, how do we get, this is very interesting, how do we get involved in whatever is going on when we are not interested in what is going on? So, the easy way to answer that question is that, when we talk about the AAIOU framework, the framework is about self-development, and the assumption is that a person will have the desire and the interest in doing well at his or her work or job, right? And when you want to do well at your work or job, it's very important to find things around us that interest us. So it could be a technology, it could be an initiative, it could be a particular area of work. So let's say that we are in a testing role, right? Maybe we are not interested in any of the testing initiatives. Perhaps our interest is that more in development side. So then we will need to speak with our managers and try to move into an area that we are interested in. And if every area in the at work is something that we are not interested in, then perhaps we should ask ourselves whether we are in the right line or not, right? But the assumption is that there will be at least some areas that we will be interested in, and that we can then try to grow and follow up on. So that was one question. One other question that has come in is, why is it that most of the self-development is taken in a route of promotion and not in terms of long-term growth? My way of looking at it, so this is the question, my way of looking at this is, I don't think self-development should be done with the objective or the sole objective of getting promotions. I feel personally that if we do try to develop ourselves, every one of us, then promotions are a byproduct, as in, the promotions will happen when they have to happen. I know that sounds cliched, but the point that I'm trying to make is that if I do well consistently, and if I'm in a fair environment, then it will be difficult for that environment and for that system and for that company to ignore my claims for promotion as and when they have to happen, right? So self-development, actually, you have answered it in the question, self-development actually is important for long-term growth, right? And the objective of self-development should not be getting promotions or getting them faster. The objective of self-development should be in terms of doing well over a long period of time. I'll take one more question and then we can move back to the slides, which is, how does the framework fit into a person currently at bench and is not sure which project he will get staffed in next? Very good question and very relevant question. The framework is not really meant for a person who is on a project or on the bench. It's meant for every individual. One example, if you are on the bench, where the framework can be used is awareness, build awareness of what are the projects which are coming in or which are currently likely to come in. So that's one example, and this can be done by speaking with seniors and other people around. What are the technologies that will be used on those projects? So build the awareness. Then send out a mail or speak with people demonstrating the enthusiasm to work on a proof of concept, for example, or build expertise on one of those technologies. All this can happen while on the bench. Perhaps work on a certification if there is enough time in one of those technology areas, right? And some hands-on exposure. And essentially then, right, get involved in whatever are the activities that are going on. They could be component building activities, they could be training activities, they could be certification activities. So try and get involved in all of those. Ownership part, if you're on the bench, and especially if you are a fresher or at the junior levels, can still be done because you can choose to write a paper, even 2 pages or 3 pages, and you can take ownership for that in a particular area, right? Or it could be in terms of a small little module that you can attempt to develop on your own, or maybe with a group of people. So the point to remember is that the framework can be leveraged whether you're on the bench or whether you are in a billable project, both. I'll now move back to the slides, but there is a request to show the E slide again, and there is also a question why enthusiasm fades off and does not move into involvement. One request from my side is that I'll come back to the E slide separately towards the end, and I'll answer this question also when we touch upon that slide. Let me do. Okay, I'm sorry. So there is some time. So what I'll do is I'll go back to the E slide. Just 1 minute, as requested. I hope this is visible, and this is the E slide, and while we are on this slide, I will try to answer this question which has come in, which is, why does enthusiasm fade off and does not move to involvement? There could be multiple reasons for this, okay, and I will attempt to answer. One is, there could be a bandwidth problem, as in we might volunteer to do certain things, right? But it is possible that we volunteer and then we are not able to find the time to make the time for whatever we have volunteered for, and that is where the enthusiasm might not get translated into involvement. One other reason could be, and one of my team members had mentioned this once, one other reason could be that maybe we might get discouraged, right? So let's say that I'm in a technical lead role and I demonstrate some enthusiasm to participate in some architecture activities, and I'm told, hey, you're just a tech lead, you don't need to get involved in architecture or higher end stuff and things like that. And if there is an unfortunate situation of that type, then the enthusiasm might go down a little bit. There's no silver bullet, there's no magical way to avoid such situations. My recommendation would be the old-fashioned concept of never giving up. Never give up, because if you're a developer and you're demonstrating enthusiasm to get involved in the next level role and activities, if you're a tech lead wanting to get involved in architecture, if you're an architect wanting to get involved in strategy, right? If you're a practice manager wanting to get involved in the overall practice head activities, right? Or a technical manager wanting to get involved in account management, and so on. Personally, if you can add value, I believe that over a period of time they will not be able to ignore you, right? So the trick is, when will you lose enthusiasm? Will you continue to be enthusiastic in spite of some discouragement and setbacks, or at the first discouragement or setback, will the enthusiasm go away? If it doesn't go away, I can guarantee that there will be multiple situations where there will be an opportunity to get involved. If you bring value to the table, then that involvement will keep going up to the extent that people will approach you and say, please, can you get involved in this? That last time you were involved in this activity, you added a lot of value, can you please get involved? So that is my opinion, and I hope I'm able to answer that particular question to some extent. I will now run through the other slides or move ahead to where we were, which was on the ownership block. And the other questions I will take after a little bit of time towards the end of the session. Now, beyond ownership, when we think of the U block, the U block represents the ultimate goal, right? And what the framework says is awareness, enthusiasm, involvement, ownership. These are all important, provided they contribute to the ultimate goal, right? They need to be done in the context of the ultimate goal. The question then is, what is the ultimate goal, right? And I would recommend those of you some of you might have attended this session if you were a part of my team earlier, but those of you who are new to this framework, I would recommend you to send in your guess for what is the ultimate goal over the chat. If you've been following the framework so far, I think your guess has a very good chance of being correct. Meanwhile, while you take a minute or two for that, we will have a quick recap on what are the steps of the AEIOU ladder. A is for awareness of the team's goals, objectives, targets, initiatives, key focus areas, and so on and so forth. E is for enthusiasm, to participate in one or more of these, right, initiatives that we become aware of. I is for involvement, actual participation in one or more of the initiatives consistently and over a long period. O is for ownership of at least one initiative in the team. It could be very small, it could be a paper, it could be a component, it could be large, it could be a new service line, it could be a new technology area, it could be a center of excellence activity, a COE, it could be a customer account, right, and ownership for a customer account, maybe because the current person has decided to move away, or so on and so forth. U is for the ultimate goal, and focused efforts on A, E, I, and O will contribute to you, should contribute to you. And with that, we can now move to the final block and what U stands for, the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal for most, and some of you would have got this right, from the guesses. The ultimate goal for every organization and for every team and for every individual for that matter, is growth, right? Now, if you take a look at your screen, my growth, that is the individual's growth, has a relationship with the team's growth, right? And this is very obvious. The obvious part is that my growth as an individual, the way it is connected with my team's growth is that there is a direct relationship, or my growth depends on my team's growth. So this is fairly obvious, right? If we are a part of a growing team, then there is a good chance that we will grow as well. But sometimes this does not happen. Sometimes we are a part of a growing team and a growing organization. We read in newspaper that our company has done very well, but still we're not happy because we are not growing. And what we need to remember is that my growth depends on my team's growth, and it also depends on how I influence my team's growth. And this is the critical part. What the framework is trying to suggest here is that it's very important for us to very clearly show to the environment and to the management how our work and our initiatives, our ownership of initiatives has resulted and contributed to the team's growth. Okay, and I know all of us finally work hard, work sincerely, and contribute to the team's growth. But sometimes it may not be very obvious, or it may not be very clear in terms of how that has happened. And our efforts should be to build our visibility and to focus our efforts such that what we do contributes directly or influences directly the team's growth. Now, the growth that we are talking about, the obvious growth is tangible growth, which is we grew quarter on quarter by so much %. We grew our headcount so much. I am a practice head and I built my team from so much to so much. Or I'm a developer, right? And I was able to contribute so many modules to my project. So the tangible growth, revenues, headcount, new customers, right? Anything related with numbers, this is fairly simple to understand. Now, there is another type of growth which is also important, which is the intangible growth, and contributions towards brand, towards visibility, towards mindshare, right, can make a big difference to the team's growth. And as an individual, our contributions to those intangible growth also can make a big difference, right? And intangible growth finally over the long run results in tangible growth. If the brand gets built up of the team and the organization, in longer term that will get translated into numbers-based growth. Now, with this, with the ultimate goal as growth, we can then summarize what are some of the takeaways from the session, which is awareness A, enthusiasm E, involvement I, ownership O, with a focus towards the ultimate goal of growth, is what the AEIOU framework is about, right? And if we keep up on these blocks and try to influence our team's growth, there is a better chance of our growth happening, right? And therefore success. Now, here is the tricky part. Depending on which team we choose, if we choose our project team and we are the project manager, then typically as a project manager of a project team or an account manager of an account, we might find ourselves on the O, which is owning that initiative completely anyway, and we are contributing to growth. So does that mean that that is the end of the ladder of the AEIOU framework? No, because you can always choose the next level team, and for the next level team, regardless of which role you're playing, typically you will find yourself on the lower rung of the ladder, one of the lower rungs. So if you're an account manager, then at a business unit level, right, maybe you might be on the I block or on the A and E blocks. Or if you're a technical lead for a particular project and you move to the account team at a higher level, then you might find yourself on one of the lower blocks. So the trick in using the framework over a long period of time is redefine what team you are a part of and keep imagining yourself to be a part of the larger team. At some stage, you will not only be a part of the larger team, but you are likely to be heading it, right? And therefore, the process is cyclical in terms of how you use the framework. So the key takeaway then from the session is my growth depends on my team's growth, number one. Second, and also on how I influence the team's growth. And three, the AEIOU approach is a framework which can help me address how I influence or contribute to my team's growth. Now, I'll keep the slide on for a moment before moving on to the questions. And there are a few more questions which have come in, which we'll now try to answer one by one. Okay, the next question is, how can a fresher make use of the AEIOU framework when he is not involved in any project? I briefly answered this for the question of a person on the bench, but for all those of you who are fresh out of college, my recommendation would be very quickly the following. One is try to build up your network within your organization and your team. Try to ask some questions and find out what is your team structure like, which team are you a part of, right? If you have not yet been allocated to a team, then what are the teams which are there in the organization? Which are some of the important customers? What are some of the projects which are going on? Which are some of the technologies that are being focused on? And you know, a lot of this information is public domain information. For example, in your company's quarterly results, if you watch it on CNBC or anywhere else, you'll get a lot of this information. You'll find out that your organization is considering cloud computing as something very important, or social computing is something very important. So build up the awareness, A for awareness. Then even if you can't demonstrate the enthusiasm to somebody else, say you're alone, you're a fresher, you just joined, read up, go to the library and try to read up about these things, right? If some of your friends can come together, 2 or 3 or 4 people, form a study group and learn about that particular area. And then as and when you get allotted to a project, or if you get introduced to some people who are running some of these initiatives, volunteer to take ownership for some of them. Let's say, for example, making a presentation in-house within the team, right? So even if you're a fresher, please do not feel that the framework cannot be leveraged. The hope is that the applicability of what we are talking about here is so simple that it can be used by a fresher as well as a person with 10, 15, 20 years of experience in the industry. Once again, it's not rocket science, and as I mentioned, I believe many of these things existed. Many of the senior people on this call might be following some of these things, and therefore my only suggestion is that I've tried to simplify it and I've tried to put it into a structured form. The next question is related to what I said some time back. This is, how do I deal with a situation when we want to get involved, but other people of the team are not interested in providing the opportunity? And I understand this happens sometimes. So the suggestion from my side would be the following. Try to identify more than one area, right? When you identify more than one area and you demonstrate enthusiasm to participate, it is possible somebody may say that no, we can't give you the opportunity right now. It's quite possible somebody else may say we are short of people, nobody is volunteering, so welcome, please join us, right? So my suggestion would be, look at more than one area that you can get involved in and keep trying, don't give up. Of course, there will be fun if everybody says okay, then you might have to get involved in a large number of things, but that's a risk I think that can be taken. Let me see the next question. Okay. There's a question on, can you explain in a simple way on how to handle a conflict if it happens with any of the team members? To be very honest, this would be out of scope of the current session, and maybe it can be covered in a separate session. The current session is focused on self-development from the point of view of leveraging a particular framework. The overall area of self-development is so vast, right? So conflict management, which is your question. Yes, we need to have approaches to conflict management, but while that is covered under self-development, I cannot cover it in the current session. It will be out of scope. The next question is, how do we keep ourselves going? And sometimes we start losing our focus and we are content with what we already know. How do we balance? Finally, it's a question of how hungry and how keen we are. So my answer is, it's a question of how hungry and how keen we are to do well and to keep growing, right? If we are satisfied with the status quo, then it is possible that we will never have that hunger, and therefore the curiosity will not be there to build awareness and so on and so forth, right? So my recommendation would be whatever works for the individual, but personal experience and after leading my team, I do know that over a period of time, if we lose focus and we are content with what we already know, then we lag behind our peers and others. When we see other people going forward, then it pinches us and then it starts hurting. So my recommendation would be that stay hungry, and if you are hungry to do well, then you will probably be smart. Stay hungry, stay smart. Different from what they normally say. The next question is an interesting one. What can be done when the manager doesn't encourage awareness? Right? How can we concentrate on self-development? You can try some guerrilla tactics. My answer is that you might have a manager who says that, hey boss, just focus on the current work and don't worry about additional things, right? It's possible. My suggestion would be that if you're delivering results, let's say that you're a developer or a tester and you're delivering results currently in your current role, then what you do in any additional time that you can squeeze out is your business. If you have a manager who's encouraging a mailer, not more about what is happening. So my recommendation is that so long as you know that building your awareness is only going to help yourself and the team, go ahead and do it. Next question is on politics. What about unwanted politics, which kills or redirects the development in other areas rather than the team goal? Related question to what we just discussed. And again, my recommendation would be, I know we have to be practical and be aware that there is politics sometimes. And we also need to be shrewd enough or smart enough to dodge that and keep following these simple steps, right? Build awareness, make sure there is enthusiasm, don't let that die, get involved, take ownership, and contribute to growth. And you know, if you are forced to work in some other area and you are convinced that that is the wrong thing to do, voice your opinion and you can differ. It is okay to differ, right? You don't have to say yes boss or yes to everything. Next question is also very relevant and very important. So a quick time check. The question to the organizers, how many more questions can we take?
We can take questions till 4:15 p.m. So we have around 18 minutes to go.
Okay. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, the next question is, I'll read out. Let us assume you are at the client location. This is a very good question. Let us assume that you are at a client location that is on-site, right? You want to get involved in, you know, initiatives and activities, but there are geography constraints, there are time zone constraints. There is no transparency, right? Maybe the offshore team may not, you know, make it very clear on what all is happening, and therefore taking initiative is difficult. And basically at on-site you end up becoming just one more human resource, one more person who's handling a project, who's billable and who's generating revenue. So this is a good question. It's applicable to many of us, you know, either currently on the call or in earlier times in our careers. My way of answering it is the following. One is that when we are on site, we have something with us which very few people do, right? And that is proximity to the customer. And when I say that, what I mean is that there is nothing which will assist growth more than direct customer contact. The ability to be near the customer, the opportunity to try to understand what the customer really wants, right? And I know the role might be such that you may not have direct customer interaction, but sometimes you can have some on-site meetings, you might have some discussions, there might be multiple opportunities. These are the opportunities that you can take to build awareness of what is happening from a customer's perspective. So when we say build awareness, it doesn't necessarily have to be for offshore initiatives. And the reason why building awareness of what the customer wants is important is that the offshore team will anyway have that as one of the goals. So if you build awareness and you say that, you know, I am aware that the customer is very interested in optimization initiatives, then it might be a chance to reach out to your offshore delivery manager and say that here is the suggestion in terms of something that the customer said yesterday, right? Then because you have initiated it and through your awareness, you can volunteer, to get involved. You can volunteer to coordinate from on-site for that particular initiative. Get involved, and if bandwidth permits, then take ownership as well. So my point is that when you're on-site, right, don't focus or don't be disheartened if you cannot have much visibility on what is happening offshore. Turn your focus to what is nearby, who's nearby, and that's the customer. And the more you can build your awareness about what the customer's problems are, what the customer is trying to do, and so on, the better it will be. And then people will chase you in terms of saying, please can you clarify what the customer said, or what do you think are the customer initiatives which are important. It's a very relevant question, very good question. Okay, the next one is a little related to what we said earlier. How to leverage the framework if you receive criticism or lack of support or have bad relations with peers. Okay, now receiving criticism or support is something which happens to us anyway, right? And this particular framework is not going to directly help to address criticism. Like I said, right, it won't handle conflict management. So addressing criticism and figuring out what to do if people are not supporting, those are separate areas under team development or people development. As far as this framework is concerned, what I do know is some of the people who I'm aware of who have been following this found out that if they do things like support somebody else, right, volunteer and support another initiative, conflicts go down. The minute somebody finds out that here is a person who is selfless and who's volunteering to help me out, right? So what I'm trying to say is that try to support somebody else. That's also important, right? If you're not getting support for any initiative that you are running, try to do whatever you can on your own, but build up your network and try to build up the goodwill. At some stage, people will say that this person is supporting me for my initiative. Let me also support him for his initiative. And somewhere, the deadlock has to be broken. So my recommendation would be that, follow the recommendation of the framework and try it out and see whether it works. Hopefully, there might be an improvement in the relations as far as the team and team members are concerned. There's a very good question here, which is the 5 points of team context. This is the next question. The 5 points of team context have not been commented on in detail. I was wondering whether anybody would catch that. I covered it very briefly in one of the slides, but the observation is absolutely correct. If I just go back to that original slide, I'm going to the summary slide. You should see it on your screen shortly. There is a slight delay. The 5 points on team context are the team goals, the team objectives, targets, initiatives, and key focus areas. And the point is that these are just examples of the team context, right? There could be more, and some of these are covered in the questionnaire. But the reason for mentioning these are, in the AEIOU framework, when we talk about awareness, it has to be awareness of the team context, which is these things, and it's not restricted to these things. This is just an example. It could be several other things as well. When we talk about enthusiasm, it will be for this team context. When we talk about involvement, the involvement has to be in one of the team initiatives, in one of the team objectives, involvement in one of the team focus areas, right? Similarly for ownership, and similarly. So we need to remember that the framework is to be used in the context of a team, and the team has to be chosen at the start of the exercise, right? So the team could be the organization, it could be the business unit, it could be the account, it could be the project, it could be a practice, right? And so on and so forth. Next question, you haven't mentioned celebration or appreciation in the framework. There is nothing more than a pat on the back by missing it in the framework. Do you suggest we aren't in need of it? Do you suggest we aren't in need of it? No, I don't suggest that we aren't in need of it. This is a self-development framework. It is an approach which an individual is recommended to use in a personal capacity, in a private capacity. And it is not a team exercise where we evaluate other people or other members of our team. And in a personal capacity, when I'm carrying out the exercise for myself, then the idea is appreciation or celebration, at an individual capacity, my appreciation for myself. Well, that will happen, but it's not something that needs to be explicitly mentioned. Otherwise, if this was a team development type of approach, then yes, appreciation for other people in the team, celebration of other people's achievements or any achievements would have been important, right? So the point is that it's not that we don't need it. Every team, every group, every organization needs to have appreciation, needs to have celebration. Out of scope is what I would say. The current scope is an approach for self-development, right, for an individual. Okay, the next question is, how about the environment? The environment needs to be supportive. Otherwise, all these can't work. Is that right or wrong? Very good question. It is right, and I would encourage you to think the following way. The purpose of the framework is to encourage individuals to contribute more or increase their contributions to their team and to their team's growth, right? That's the purpose. The idea is a structured approach for self-development and increasing contributions to the team's growth. Now, if there is a team which is discouraging people from contributing to its growth, then it's a very strange scenario, let me put it that way. Or in general, once this purpose is established, almost all regular teams with a primary objective to growth will encourage some activities. And I know that this sounds very theoretical and it sounds on paper, but we have seen it working. We have seen it in front of our eyes. We have seen it working. If you go to the lead of the team and ask that person point blank, do you want this team to grow or do you not want this team to grow? Why will that person say no? Why will any lead of any team say that we are here and we don't want to grow? Right? So every team's reason for existence is growth. Without growth, there's no survival. The team will get disbanded and dissolved. And anybody who says that I want to contribute to my team's growth and this is what I can do, you can't be discouraged, at least not consistently, right? And if it happens consistently, then maybe we are in the wrong team. It's time to, take stock of where we are and why we are there. Okay, the next question is on, we'll take 2 or 3 more questions. Growth can still be directly linked to promotion. How do we motivate or convince at all levels that it is a byproduct? Very good question. My way of looking at it is the following. I think the definition, right, of growth needs to be examined. And personally speaking, and I have explored this with my team and it has worked. Can we define growth as increasing our contributions to our team, visible contributions and very clear contributions to our team? So what that means is that as an individual, my contribution this quarter to the team's growth has been more than the previous quarter, and this year has been more than the previous year. If we convey this message to our team members that growth is about increased contributions and the comparison is with yourself, not with somebody else. So are you growing in your comparisons with respect to yourself over a period of time? If that happens, and if somebody is consistently contributing to the growth of the team, then the point is that it will be difficult to keep that person away from promotions and progressions and so on. It doesn't make business sense, and that is what has to be conveyed to the person. In spite of that, if there are consistent contributions to growth and the system is such that the person does not get the promotions, or if the system discourages for various reasons the person from getting a promotion, then maybe there is a problem with the system itself and not a problem with that person or with the manager, right? So my recommendation is that as a manager, if a person is convinced that this person from my team has grown in terms of his contributions, then the promotion should definitely happen. Yes, in practice, it might get delayed by one cycle and so on. But if I were a manager and if somebody who I recommended or who I was convinced of consistently got a bad deal in the organization and did not get a promotion in time, then I would tell that person, this is not the right place for you. Okay. So I have time for two more questions perhaps. Let me see. The question is, I'll read it out. What if my senior or manager does not have a similar view or approach towards self-development as I have? That's a good point. What we need to remember is that you can develop on your own with or without your manager supporting you. What I mean by that is there's nothing stopping you from reading about a new area and becoming an expert in that area. There is nothing stopping, if you're a developer in C++, there is nothing stopping you. There's no manager who can stop you from getting a Java certification if you do it on your own initiative, right? So the point is that explore whether your manager is willing to support you, and if your manager for whatever reason is not very supportive or not directly supportive, then try to leverage the framework and grow. Remember that when we say growth, it means your own growth with respect to your contributions earlier on in time, right? So try to do that anyway, and at some stage either the current manager will recognize and get involved, or another manager will recognize and get involved, right? So my recommendation, just go ahead and do it. Next question, I'm working in a small R&D company. I'm an individual contributor, as in I don't have a team member. How can I develop myself without any team members, right? So the suggestion would be that, again, take it step by step. Draw out a chart of your team structure. So you are a single member in one team, right? Try to find out which is the larger team that you are a part of, who's your manager, which is the larger team that the manager is a part of, and so on. Which team is the manager a part of, and so on, right? Then try to find out what are the various initiatives which are going on at various levels. If there is nothing happening from your perspective, then try to find out from your customer, or go one level up to the next level of the team and try to find out what else is happening, and try to get involved there. At some stage, you will roll off the project, you will get rotated out of the project, and at that stage, if you are prepared for the next role, nothing like it, right? So be prepared for that. Okay, the next question is a personal one. I don't know if I should take it or not. Okay, being a technical person, what made you get into people-oriented topics? Please throw some light. Right, some of you, especially if you have been in my team earlier, will be smiling. Okay, so I will try to answer very quickly, which is, I think, so first of all, thank you for considering me as a technical person. After this webinar, I don't know why you feel that way. Perhaps you're one of my earlier team members. I'm not able to see clearly. Okay, so here is my opinion. In particular, the IT services industry, but in general, right, our society overall. If you see the IT services industry, finally, what type of a business is it? It's a people-based business. And companies do well, survive, succeed based on the caliber of the people who are there in the teams, in the organization. So in my case, for example, and several of you who are in leadership roles hopefully will identify, the leader is as good as the team, right? If we are alone, there is no way we can achieve what we have achieved. Every one of us in leadership roles has been able to reach there today or do well because we were lucky enough to get good teams and good team members along the way, right? Now, if we acknowledge that leadership success is to do with the caliber and the quality of the team that is with you, then it is very common sense to spend a portion of your time and effort in giving back a little bit, in trying to enrich a little bit, and in trying to share a little bit if there is some value which can be added. Because if people can take away something from this session, for example, the hope is that you'll pass it on. Maybe some of you might write to me separately, and the network gets built and the movement gets built. So all this, what I'm presenting, is in the open. I will try to make these slides available in an area where everybody has access to them. I would encourage the people on this call, technical or non-technical, to take the material and reuse it if you find it of any value, either in an individual capacity or for your teams, right? So I will not be having any proprietary stuff for copyright and whatnot out there. And if it helps and if it can make a difference, then the purpose is served. So that's all that we have time for as far as the questions are concerned. There are a few more which I will try to answer offline. And I would now like to hand it over to the organizers.
Okay, we can conclude the session now. Thank you.
All right. I'll just need half a minute or 1 minute. I hope everybody can see the slide. This is the last slide. First of all, thank you, every one of you, for taking the time to attend this session. And I hope there was some takeaway. The course content is original, and I would like to use the word discovered rather than invented. The approach is very simple, hopefully simple to remember, and hopefully can be practiced without referring to the slides again. But if you would like to reuse and conduct such sessions at your premises, you're welcome to do so. I'd like to acknowledge whatever I have learned over years at Wipro, where I was earlier, and my current organization, which is Happiest Minds. Feel free to email me on any questions or clarifications, any comments, any experiences that you might want to share. Also, if you check my blog, which is mentioned there, then there are some other articles and insights. The current content, I will be trying to make that available as a downloadable PDF out there, which can be used from a reference perspective. And I will be hoping to have the slides available in a public domain sometime soon, so that people can take a look at them and reuse them as required. Thank you very much to all the 700, 800 odd people who have joined in for this. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Mr. Shantanu, for your informative session on success to self-development and innovative approach. It was indeed an enlightening session. I would also like to thank our participants for their support in making this webinar a huge success. The recording of this webinar will be available on tedric.com by tomorrow. Gentlemen, the next session in Tech Leadership series is happening on Wednesday, March 14th at 3 p.m. Topic for the webinar is 10 Mistakes of My Career. We'll be having Mr. Krishnan Natarajan, Vice President Product Marketing through Thought Workshop Studios as a guest speaker. So see you all on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Thank you.